If you have dogs that never want to leave you alone, no matter what room in the house you're in, hit that subscribe button. But what I'm here to show you right now is this is what you're used to seeing with a regular daytime scope, but it's really hard through the camera to convey what a thermal clip-on does, and that's what I'm going to give my best attempt. So I have a fancy camera set up, rigged together. I'm not standing in front of a rifle, so YouTube reviewers or internet safety officers, I'm not being stupid here, but I want to show you optically what this looks like. So here is the daytime view, and now we're going to switch with the thermal overlay. So there you have it. It just completely converts your daytime optic into a thermal optic. How's it going, guys, and welcome to 4MR Ranch. Today I'm excited to be talking to you about a clip-on thermal device. This one is the TB630 by Guide Sensmart. So in a nutshell, what is it? It is a 640 by 512 resolution thermal sensor within this. It does have a 12 micron pixel density. So in terms of the latest and greatest thermal technology, it is meeting that gold standard that I highly recommend you stick to based on what's currently available at the time of this video. On top of that, this thing is very, very clean in terms of its thermal resolution, capability, etc. It's a pretty strong performer. Admittedly, I had not heard of Guide Sensmart, so I looked into them, and it seems like they have quite an established reputation when it comes to thermal technology as a whole, but now it looks like they're trying to tap into the hunting and or tactical application, market share. So there's gonna be a little bit of growing pains with that. I'm gonna address that later in the video because this is not 100% perfect, nothing is, so I'll talk to you about the good, the bad, and the ugly in this video. On that note, I want to be transparent. They did send it my way. I'm still going to be honest with you about my opinions on this, but I want to remain transparent, let you know this was sent to them by me. I do, while we're talking about companies, want to thank Warhammer Armaments for sponsoring this channel. Keep in mind that they are kind of your guru for all things night vision, thermal, and they are some master armorers and build some absolute pieces of art. So check them out. They are in my link tree below. In addition, Optics Planet is also a supporter of the channel. They have set up discount code 4MRR. Now, if you are lucky and happen to be watching this video in the month of November 2024, that code is good to up to 10% right now. Otherwise, it's 7%, but it gives me hope that depending on when you're watching this, if you try the code, it may do you better than 7%. So shout out to them for supporting the channel, some future content that is currently in the works, and for saving you guys some money. All good things there. But back to the TB630. So like I said, this is a thermal clip-on device. It does have internal recording capabilities. It is powered by two 18650 batteries. So that is actually my preferred power source because these are kind of a dime a dozen. You can get a bunch of them. They're not super expensive, and in general, they have pretty good battery life. On that note, Guide Sensmart advertises a 10-hour battery life. I'm in slight disagreement with them there. I got probably closer to 6 to 7 hours, but in all fairness, most of the time I was running this thing on max brightness. Their 10-hour advertisement is probably on the mid screen brightness setting. So as quickly as I can, I do want to touch on why I like thermal clip-on devices in general when we're talking thermal capabilities. First of all, you see it here, it's pretty much handheld. It looks like it could be a monocular, but it's not really intended to be a monocular. However, you can still use it as monocular. So it's almost a two birds and one stone. If you are like me, you don't have an unlimited budget, you can't buy both sometimes. So this is kind of a do-all thermal device. Because what I personally do, just to give you some food for thought, I will drive around scouting for hogs at night, and I will be using a thermal clip-on more often than not to scan and try to find a group of hogs. I then play the wind, figure out which the best approach angle is. I'll walk around, kind of keep tabs on them, still going handheld, so I don't lose sight of them, lose track of them. When I close the gap to where I think it's sufficient and it's time to go to work, I just clip this on to my rig, and now my setup is thermal capable. So there you have it. It just completely converts your daytime optic into a thermal optic. I also want to point out that I have an illuminated reticle, which I think helps with the contrast, makes it a lot more pleasing and easy to pick up to the viewer's eye. So this is what the TB630 looks like in white hot. Now there's a couple other things I want to point out to you. We're going to switch it to their outline mode real quick. So if I quick tap the menu, your quick settings come up. Just gonna scroll over, and there's this one for outline. If I tap the menu button again, notice how it just kind of pops some contrast now. It's kind of using some AI in the optic to outline things, and I just want to give you a quick look at what that looks like. So here is the outline mode. You should be seeing me with more contrast, kind of highlighting things. So here's a view of what you can expect with that. Easy. So if you want to see what animals would potentially look like, here you go. So if you see a coyote or a hog in the field, kind of give you an idea of what that outline mode looks like on something with fur, a little furrier than I am. Thank you, Remy. The next thing that I think is worth covering real quick is there's different enhancement modes. So I just have your basic enhancement. There's one for nature. So I have a feeling it's just going to kind of help clean up the image when you have a variety of thermal profiles. But there's also a highlight mode, and I will let you see what that one looks like. So this is the still white hot, but now it's the highlight enhancement mode. Just keep in mind there's a number of combinations here. You can really play around with it. There's also the thermal settings. You can play with contrast, brightness, sharpness, all that stuff. So too many combinations to show in one video. It is user customizable. Just stopping briefly on the key points. Keep in mind this is kind of a jack of all trades, but it's master of none. So when you compare this directly to a dedicated thermal optic, the dedicated thermal optic on average is going to outperform an average thermal clip-on. But on the flip side of that, if you try to do spotting and scouting with the thermal optic, first of all, you're having to point your entire setup where you want to scout. That may not be ideal. It's also a lot heavier to have something doing this versus just kind of casually doing this. And especially if you're going to be using it in a vehicle like I do, hanging an entire rifle setup out the window, less than ideal than just doing this, right? So just food for thought there, keep it in mind. But the other perk that I don't see enough people talking about is pertaining to the zero. And that's what I'm gonna focus on for a lot of the remainder of this video. When you try to zero a thermal optic, you're really gonna be at the mercy of your base magnification and the resolution of the thermal sensor. For example, if you have a base magnification of only about 2 power and a thermal sensor of a 384 resolution, for example, when you crank that in to 100 yards, it's gonna become incredibly pixelated, you're gonna lose a lot of detail, and your zero is just not gonna be able to be that precise because you have limited information as the shooter. When it comes to thermal clip-ons, this is where they really shine. You get to use your daytime optic to get a nice, precise daytime zero with all of that standard imagery you're used to seeing when you're at a bench rest. So you can get that group, be nice and happy. You probably already have a zeroed optic, and then all you got to do is throw this on top and you supplement it. When it gets too dark to see through that daytime optic, now you have a thermal capable optic. So 2 birds, 1 stone. And that's a huge perk there. But, and this is what we're going to talk about for a majority of the video now, how useful is a clip-on thermal if it doesn't hold your zero? So what you see is the 3 mounts that I currently have for this device, 2 of which, these 2 right here, I want to be clear, are the ones that were included with my TB630. One is a Picatinny adapter, so it basically has a scope ring and it just clamps over the threaded rear eyepiece, and then you use that QD lever like you would expect, and it goes in front of your daytime optic using the rail space in front of it if you have some. If you don't have rail space, you got to use this bell adapter. This bell adapter just threads onto the rear and then it clamps on to the bell, the objective lens of your daytime optic. The problem with the included guide Sensmart ones, other than the fact that they clearly went cheap on the hardware, which is disappointing when you have a beautifully performing thermal optic and you choose to cut that corner, and that's the mounting interface directly impacts your user experience. That was a disappointment there, but beyond that, they have 3 sizes. They call it A, B, and C. So it's not, they try to make it a one size fits all. In fact, they included this box of rubber shims to where basically you can just, you know, line the inside of that bell, and then hopefully you get it a nice and tight fit to the outside of your optic. Issue with that is, and I tried to do it for you guys at the range and eventually got frustrated and gave up, your performance of this is going to directly correlate to your ability to shim this and keep it perfectly concentric. So keep that in mind, because if you have it towards slightly offset, ever so slight angle, it's going to throw your zero off. And like I said, that pretty much gets rid of the advantage of being able to throw this on and keep that nice precise zero. So you need to keep that in mind. Now with the Picatinny adapter, I did test its ability to maintain zero, both on paper, and I could tell it wasn't 100% perfect. In general, I think a lot of clip-on thermals advertise things in the ballpark of a 2 MOA, zero retention capability. But from a practical standpoint, I had my rifle zeroed with just the optic, threw this on, and I was able to still make consistent hits on a little 8-inch plate at 200 yards. I'm super steady.
I think you got that one right.
I think that zero's pretty well maintained.
Oh, way back there. I was at the 200.
Yeah, 300 yards on the right. I could see it
swinging. Yeah, I don't know where you hit it.
All right, well, we're gonna get gutsy. I'm gonna go for the real small one on the left.
Good. And that's clean. Oh, 5 o'clock, bottom right.
Okay, so that's probably what, like a 5-inch target at 300 yards?
I think it's about a 5.
So I think that shows that if you throw this thing on, your zero is pretty good.
Are you compensating at all? Because
no,
it's
I mean,
300?
I held the top edge because it's 300 yards.
Yeah. Top left edge or just top?
Just top center. I mean, there's gonna be some human error in there, but the fact that I hit a 5-inch-ish target at 300 yards with the clip-on, I'd be happy to use this for hunting. So I know within margin of error, if I'm hunting hogs within 200 yards, I can still take very consistent body shots on those hogs. And I, from a practical standpoint, am happy with that. If you want to shoot precise with thermal, then you really need the dedicated thermal optic, but keep in mind you're then now limited to how well you can zero it. So there's really, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place in the scenario where these don't keep your zero good, but this one seemed to be fairly sufficient. Now the third mount, the good news is that the US distributor for Guide Sensmart has an additional bell adapter lineup that they offer. I believe they even sell these as a package deal that I recommend you look into, where you get an LPVO, you get this bell adapter, and they have multiple sizes. The cool thing is these bell adapters that RST Outdoor has are made by a company called Rusan, R-U-S-A-N. And it is not one size fits all. They're made very specifically for sizes. So this is a 30mm adapter. It'll go on your 30mm LPVOs, which is how I ran it. And it has a very, very tight tolerance to where it stays nice and concentric, has a very tight lockup, and even has a built-in rubber lining to where you don't scratch your scope, whereas the included one before shims is just metal, and you're definitely gonna over time put some wear on the outside of potentially an expensive optic. So they definitely scored some points back in my book for having some options ready for their US consumers. I have seen that Guide Sensmart has since also started offering the built-in QD levers directly to the bottom of their optic, which is great. So I'm assuming that they're getting some user feedback and they're improving, because this one does work as that, but since it's a cantilever, depending on the buttons and stuff you're pressing and how hard you're pressing, it may, you got some leverage on there, so you may cause some shifting. So although this was workable, it was good, I wouldn't say I love this mount either. So like I mentioned, it seems like they're kind of new to this space, so I think the mounting interface is one of their growing pains, because although there's a lot of Chinese companies that are making some phenomenal and very technologically advanced products, they don't necessarily use them firsthand. Firearms aren't very prevalent in other countries like they are in the United States. So people are designing things based on what they think you want and need, and they're not really making it based off of first-hand experience. So me, as someone with first-hand experience of this, these are workable. They're not great. I recommend, if you are looking for this, you look for the one with the built-in QD levers. I think you will have a much better experience. And that's just me being honest. For the price tag that thermal technology comes in, I'm gonna judge it at that price tag. If this thing came in at $300, I'd say buy 12 of them today, but that's not the case. I believe these come in around $3,000. Therefore, I wanna make sure your money goes as far as possible. So all in all, this thing is such a good thermal performer that I think I'm willing to tolerate the mounts that came with mine. As mentioned, the mounts seem to be improving, so I just recommend you look to try to get the most improved mount version out there at the time of going into it. It's a very intuitive device. It was easier for me to figure out right away. The one thing I really liked is that the side focusing knobs are there. Normally you have to reach all the way around to the front of a thermal clip-on, which depending on how long your rig is, how long your daytime optic is, that could be quite a stretch. So this is more ergonomic from the user standpoint. So that's great there. 18650 batteries is a huge win as well. However, if there's questions I left unanswered, please leave a comment below. Another shout out again to Warhammer Armaments and Optics Planet for their role in supporting the upcoming and ongoing content for the channel. And a huge thank you to you guys for taking the time to stop by. And as always guys, have a good one.